Make yourself comfortable. Take a deep breath. And let the world around you grow quiet for a moment. Before we begin, you can press the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and, when this story is over, leave a comment with your thoughts. Your support helps more forgotten voices from the past come back to life. Now settle in. This is the story of Silas, the slave with the strange, beautiful, feminine chest. The man they tried to own, display, and sell like a rare creature, but whose soul they never managed to buy. Silas was born on a night when the stars refused to come out. Thick clouds smothered the sky above the Whitford plantation, and the wind carried the smell of wet dirt, smoke, and something metallic from the kitchen. Blood, perhaps, or iron, or the taste of fear itself. In a narrow back room behind the kitchen stove, his mother lay on a thin pallet, muscles shaking, hands gripping the dirty sheets so hard her knuckles went white. She bit her own tongue and the inside of her cheek, swallowed her cries, and stared at the beams overhead as if she could climb into them and disappear. "Push," the old midwife whispered. "Come on, girl. Quiet now. You know she don't like to be woken." By she, the midwife meant the mistress, asleep in her feather bed upstairs, wrapped in linen and perfume, untouched by the sweat and pain flowing through the wooden bones of the house below her. Births in the quarters were supposed to happen silently, as if new lives could be smuggled into the world like stolen sugar. Silas came into that world with a choked, angry cry, sucking in air as if he didn't trust it to stay. The midwife caught him, wiped his face, slapped his back gently, and listened to the sound of him. Crying meant lungs. Lungs meant life. Life meant work, and value, and one more line in the master's book. "Healthy," she murmured. "Strong enough. You did well." His mother reached for him with shaking hands, pulled him to her chest, and pressed her lips against his damp forehead. For a brief moment, there was no plantation, no master, no future rows of cotton. There was only the hot, small weight of him against her and the furious, stubborn beat of his tiny heart. "What you gonna call him?" the midwife asked softly. His mother hesitated. Names were dangerous things. Names made it harder to watch someone sold away. "I'll whisper it later," she said. "When no one's listening." By sunrise, the news had moved through the plantation like a low wind. Another boy born in the back room. Another back, another pair of hands, another breath in a world that measured him in numbers before it ever thought to ask his name. In the big house, Mr. Whitford made a small mark in his ledger. Sex, male. Mother, Leah. Status, property. Weeks passed. The baby did not die. He coughed, cried, fed, and clung to his mother's finger with surprising strength. One evening, when the workday finally bled into night, a tired woman in the quarters took him into her arms and rocked him by the dim glow of a lantern. "Silas," she whispered into his hair. Little Silas. The name was a breath, a wish, a secret. It stuck. Silas grew up knowing the sound of the whip before he understood half the words the white men used. He learned to walk by stumbling across packed dirt floors and uneven steps. He learned to listen before he learned to argue, because listening could keep you alive. Listening for footsteps, for raised voices, for the sound of anger gathering like thunder. The world he knew was wood and dust and cotton and sweat, the rhythm of bells and shouted orders, the creak of harnesses and the muffled sobs people swallowed down after sundown so they wouldn't wake the overseer. At first, he looked like any other boy. His arms were thin, his ribs visible under his skin when he lifted his shirt, his knees scuffed from falling. His mother cleaned him when she could, wiped the dirt from his face with rough hands, hummed to him in the nights when the crickets shrieked and the frogs bellowed in the distant swamps. He ran with the other children when they were allowed a sliver of time between chores, bare feet slapping the earth, laughter breaking free in quick bursts before fear pulled it back down. The plantation did not care that he was alive. It cared only that he would one day be useful. The first changes came quietly. His arms grew stronger from hauling and pushing and carrying buckets. His shoulders broadened from lifting heavy sacks. His back thickened, his hands hardened. Work carved lines into him as he grew taller. The sun burned his skin into a deep brown that seemed to drink in light and hold it. The other boys grew too, their bodies turning lean and sharp as tools. When they pulled off their shirts to wash at the river, their chests were flat, ribs like faint bars under the surface, shoulders bony, collars jutting out. Work and hunger carved them into narrow shapes, all bone and sinew. But Silas' body did something else. At first, It was just a hint, a strange fullness beneath his shirt, a gentle roundness where there should have been a flat plane. He thought maybe he was gaining weight, that the bread he sometimes managed to steal from leftover plates was going straight to his torso. He tried to work harder, sweat more, burn away whatever softness was creeping in. The fullness did not go away. It grew. While the other boy's chest stayed flat and bony, Silas' chest swelled, rounding outward in a way that made no sense. What began as a small curve turned into something unmistakable. 2 full mounds of flesh pressing out beneath his skin, not soft and sagging like fat, but firm and rounded, like the breasts of a young woman on the upper body of a strong, growing man. The first time he really saw it was in the river. It was a blistering day, the kind when the heat clung to skin and buzzed in the air. The overseer had turned his back for just a little too long, and a group of boys darted off toward the water, laughter spilling from them in nervous bursts. Silas went with them, heart pounding with fear of being caught and joy at the thought of cool water on hot skin. They stripped fast, flinging shirts on the bank, ducking into the muddy river. Silas hesitated. He knew his body felt different lately. He felt the weight and movement of his chest when he ran, the way his shirt brushed against it, the way sweat seemed to collect there. But he hadn't seen it clearly. "Come on, Silas," one of the boys called. "What, you shy now?" He swallowed, pulled his shirt over his head, and stepped out from behind the bush that had partly hidden him. The change in the air was instant. Laughter died. Words choked off. The boys in the water turned to stare. Silas felt their eyes before he understood exactly what they were seeing. Then he looked down. His chest rose up from his ribs in 2 rounded hills, full and heavy, their shape undeniably feminine, though the muscles underneath were strong from labor. His nipples were small, dark circles on the front, tightening in the cool air. His shoulders were broader now, his arms thickening, his waist narrowing as he grew, but his chest looked like it had been borrowed from another body entirely. "What is that?" One boy blurted out. "Lord," another whispered, half laughing, half horrified. "He got breasts." "Like a girl." Someone else yelled. The word cut the air. Silas' face burned. He crossed his arms over his chest, trying desperately to hide the fullness, to flatten himself, to become normal again by sheer will. His arms didn't help. The rounded shape was still there, visible above and below his forearms, his skin tightening under his own grip. "Maybe he half a woman," one boy mocked, splashing water. "Maybe that why he so quiet. Maybe he's scared Theo'll find out." They laughed again, louder this time, turning their discomfort into cruelty because cruelty was easier than fear. Silas stumbled backward, grabbed his shirt, and yanked it on. It clung to the damp skin of his strange, large, feminine chest, outlining what he wanted so badly to disappear. He did not swim that day. He did not want the water. He wanted walls, darkness, anywhere to hide from eyes and laughter. From that day forward, his body stopped being just a body. It became a secret he could not hide, a joke some people whispered about and others stared at in open confusion. And the more he tried to hunch his shoulders and fold inward, the more obvious the shape became. In the quarters, people reacted in different ways. Some of the boys tormented him, poking his chest when they walked past, snickering, daring each other to say things out loud. "Hey, Silas," one would jeer, "you gonna need a corset soon? Maybe master put you in a dress," another would hiss. "See how pretty you look then." The women watched with more complicated eyes. One older woman shook her head and muttered, "God plays strange games sometimes. Don't mean he ain't a man. Just means he carrying something heavy, inside and out." Silas tried to pretend that words didn't cut, that stares didn't burn. He wore his shirts loose when he could. He avoided taking them off even in the worst heat. But shirts could not erase what flesh had decided to do. The outline remained, undeniable. The first white man to truly see it was the one who owned him. Mr. Whitford was not a cruel master by local standards. That did not make him kind. It made him efficient. He preferred profit to spectacle, numbers to noise. He beat when he had to, withheld when he needed to, and congratulated himself on being less brutal than others. One evening, when Silas was about 17, the fields glowed gold with dying light. The bell had rung. The other slaves were dragging themselves back toward the quarters. Silas stayed behind, bundling up a pile of tools. Hoes, rakes, a broken spade someone had left leaning against a post. "Boy, a voice said from behind him. Silas turned. Whitford stood at the end of the row, hat pushed back, shirt still clean despite the long day. His pale eyes were narrowed, not quite in anger, but in assessment. "Yes, master," Silas said quickly. Whitford's gaze ran down his body. The shirt Silas wore was soaked with sweat, clinging to his skin in a way he hated. It stuck especially across his chest, hugging the rounded shape there so that even in dim light it was noticeable. "Take off your shirt," Whitford said. Silas' stomach flipped. For the briefest moment, his fingers refused to move. Then habit, fear, and a lifetime of obedience took over. He set the tools down, grabbed the hem of his shirt, and pulled it over his head. The air hit his bare skin, cooler now that the sun was sinking. He felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. His shoulders were strong, arms roped with muscle, ribs just visible along his sides. And his chest, large and rounded and undeniably feminine in shape, glowed softly in the evening light. Whitford stared. He did not hide it. He did not pretend to be looking at something else. His gaze rested on Silas' chest as if he was seeing a new kind of animal, or a new kind of tool, or some rare fruit that had grown on a familiar tree. "Turn," Whitford said quietly. Silas turned. The man walked a slow circle around him, eyes flicking from back to shoulders to chest again. Silence stretched, heaviness gathering in it like storm clouds. At last, Whitford spoke. "Put your shirt back on." Silas dressed as fast as his shaking hands would allow. "You're done in the fields for today," Whitford said. "Come up to the house. There might be better use for you than bending over rows." That night, on Silas' thin pallet in the quarters, a plate waited. Fresher bread, a thicker piece of meat than he had seen in months, a little smear of dark, sticky molasses on the side. It looked like a feast. The other men stared. What'd he do to get that? One demanded. "Master sent it," a woman murmured. "I saw the girl from the kitchen bring it herself. Eat it, child. Don't ask too many questions." Silas ate, each bite a mixture of gratitude, unease, and something colder. When he lay down afterward, his chest felt heavier than ever, as if it had been filled with stones instead of flesh. Over the next weeks, he was called to the house more often. To carry trays. To polish boots. To fix a loose board. To stand quietly in a corner while white men talked about money and crops and politics. The mistress hardly saw him at all when she did glance in his direction. Her eyes slid away quickly. The master, however, watched with growing curiosity. One late afternoon, Whitford sat in his study, coat off, suspenders digging into his stomach, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the desk. Silas stood by the door, waiting for instructions. "You're different, Silas," Whitford said suddenly. Silas kept his gaze on the floor. "Yes, master. You know it. They know it. I know it." The master's eyes dropped deliberately to Silas' chest, even under the shirt. "Others I can use in one way. You, maybe I can use in more." Silas swallowed. "Yes, master." Whitford rose, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of him. "From tonight," he said, "you'll sleep in the house. There's a little room off my bedroom. Too far to send boys running from the quarters every time I need something in the night. You'll be there. Understand?" "Yes, master." The little room was barely more than a closet with a cot in it, but it had walls that were not splitting and a roof that did not leak. It smelled of linen and polished wood instead of mold. Silas lay down there the first night, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of the big house. He heard footsteps. He heard the creak of the master's bed. He heard nothing else. A week later, that changed. It was a night soaked in humidity, the air so thick that even standing still made sweat bead on skin. Whitford came into the small room without knocking, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair slightly mussed. "You look cramped in here," he said, voice almost casual. He sat down at the edge of the cot, and the narrow mattress bowed beneath his weight. "Bed in there is big enough for two. No need to be stubborn about it." Silas' heart hammered against his large, feminine chest, each beat like a fist against bone. "I'm all right here, master," he said quietly. Whitford studied him for a long moment, his gaze flicking again to the outline of Silas' chest beneath the shirt. "You're mine," he said, as if that settled everything. "I take care of what's mine. Come on." Silas stood slowly, his legs feeling heavier than stone. He followed the master into the larger bedroom. The bed there spread wide, its white sheets glowing faintly in the lamplight. "Lie down," Whitford said. Silas lay on one side, close to the edge, as if he might fall off and disappear. Whitford got in beside him, the mattress dipping more. For a while, they simply lay there, the master's breathing loud in the quiet. Then Whitford's arm moved sideways and settled across Silas' torso. His hand came to rest naturally on the top of Silas' chest, over that strange, large, rounded, feminine swell. His fingers spread slightly, feeling the curve, the warmth, the fine tremor in the muscles underneath. "There," he murmured, almost to himself. "That's better." Silas did not move. He did not pull away. He lay stiff as wood, staring at the darkness, the weight of that hand pressing down not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to remind him. This, too, is owned. From then on, most nights were the same. Outside, the master acted like any plantation owner. He shouted at the overseer, haggled with traders, counted bales of cotton. Inside, in that room, he sometimes became quieter. He would drink too much, slump into bed, throw an arm over Silas' full, feminine chest, and sigh as if he had found a strange, living pillow that no one else knew about. Sometimes, when hunger and loneliness crept too close, Silas pretended that the warmth of another body next to his meant something like care. Most of the time, he knew better. The other slaves noticed enough to know something was happening. They saw the extra food, the better shirts, the softer shoes. They saw Silas walk out of the house in the early morning with eyes ringed by sleeplessness but skin unmarked by fresh lashes. They saw the way Whitford would sometimes clap him on the shoulder, sometimes call him by name in a tone that wasn't sharp. Why he get that treatment? One man muttered. Because of that chest, another replied, spitting in the dirt. Master likes strange things. Likes to keep them where he can see them. Maybe touch them. Silas heard. Shame prickled under his skin. But anger lived there too, deeper down, waiting. The day the anger finally woke was the day he heard his price spoken out loud. The traders came in a heat wave, cuffs of their shirts damp with sweat but their voices loud and thick with whiskey. Whitford received them in his study, laughing too hard at jokes, his eyes glittering when they spoke of markets and opportunities. Silas was told to bring drinks and then leave. He walked down the hallway, tray steady in his hands, bare feet silent on the floor. As he reached the door, the voices inside sharpened. "So you really got him?" One man said. "The one with the chest?" Whitford chuckled. "You think I make that up?" "I don't know what men like you make up these days," the trader replied. "But if he is what you say, a man with a chest like a woman, still strong, still obedient, then there's money there. Big money." "How much?" Whitford asked. The question came out too quickly. The hunger behind it was naked. In the right cities? The trader mused. Across the ocean? Easily 2 million. Maybe more. You parade him in front of their fine ladies. Call him a living riddle. They'll fill the hall night after night just to stare and talk behind their fans. Silas breath hitched. 2 million. The number sounded like a shout and a whisper at the same time. You'd sell him as a performer? The other trader asked, intrigued. As a marvel, the first one corrected. As a thing they can't forget. But first, where'd buy him from you? The silence that followed said more than any words could have. Silas imagined Whitford's face, calculating, greedy, flattered, torn between habit and hunger. You'd pay 2 million? Whitford asked quietly. If he is what you say, came the answer. Silas stood there, hidden by the half-closed door, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He had always known he was property. He had known his body belonged to someone else. But hearing a price like that, hearing his strange, large, feminine chest turned into a number that echoed in white men's mouths like a hymn, broke something inside him that had managed to stay intact through everything else. He stepped into the room when he was called. "Ah," Whitford said, too cheerful, "speak of the devil. Come here, Silas." Silas walked closer, tray balanced, eyes trained on a spot above the master's shoulder. "Set it down," Whitford said. "Now, take off your shirt." The traders leaned forward eagerly. Silas' fingers moved as if they didn't belong to him. He unbuttoned the shirt, peeling it away from his skin. The room's air felt thick. He placed the shirt aside and stood there, bare-chested in front of 3 men who saw nothing human in the sight. The traders circled him the way men circle a horse, or a prize bull. Incredible, one breathed. Look at that. From the front, it looks like a woman's chest. From the side, too. But the shoulders are all man. The arms are all man. It's wrong. It's right. It's perfect for what we need. Turn, the other commanded. Silas turned. Imagine the stories we could tell, the first trader said. A curse, a blessing, a miracle, a punishment. People will eat it up. 2 million is nothing compared to a lifetime of ticket sales. Whitford watched, jaw tight, eyes bright. He did not stop them. He did not tell them to shut up. He did not tell them that Silas was a man and not a show. When they finally told him to dress, Silas pulled his shirt on with hands that shook less than before. Something had hardened in him. That night, Whitford avoided meeting his eyes when he spoke. "There's been an offer," he said. Silas stood in the bedroom, hands at his sides. "Yes, master. A good one. More than I ever thought I'd DC for anyone's slave. Yes, master. I'm selling you, Silas." There it was. No softness, no dressing it in kinder language. Just the crack of truth, quick and final. It landed like the sound of a whip, cutting through the air between them. Silas swallowed. Why now? Whitford looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time in a long time there was something like discomfort in his gaze. "You did everything right," he said. "That's the problem. You've become too valuable to keep." Silas wanted to ask. Valuable to what? To whom? Valuable to your ledger? To your greed? To your pride? But all he managed was one more question, one that came out small and hoarse. "Did you ever care for me?" Whitford's face shifted, then smoothed. "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to," he said, and turned away. The auction at New Orleans was a storm made of bodies and voices. The heat pressed down like a hand. Men shouted. Women fanned themselves. The smell of sweat and fear hung heavy over everything. Children cried. Chains rattled. The platform in the center of it all waited like a stage thirsty for suffering. Silas was brought out shirtless. The trader who had promised 2 million insisted on it. "They have to see what they're buying," he said. "That's the whole point." The crowd gasped when Silas stepped onto the block. Some laughed nervously. Some muttered the Lord's name. Some simply stared, their eyes tracing the outline of his large, rounded, feminine chest, rising and falling as he breathed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer shouted, "you ain't never seen nothing like this, I promise you that. Strong as any man, built for hard work, but with a chest like a woman's. A living curiosity. A wonder. A question God himself left hanging in the air." He walked slowly, turning so everyone could see. Faces blurred. Only their eyes remained. Prying, hungry, horrified, fascinated. A woman in the front row covered her mouth with her gloved hand, cheeks flushed. The man beside her whispered something into her ear that made her eyes widen even more. Bidding began. Numbers flew higher and higher, detached from reality. It was no longer about purchasing labor. It had become a competition. Who would own the strangest thing in the room? 1.5 million. 1.7. 1.9. 2 million. Sold. The auctioneer cried, slamming his palm on the podium. To Don Esteban de la Vega of Madrid. The gavel came down. The sound reverberated through Silas' bones, each shockwave a reminder that he had just been sold for a price no one in his world could even properly imagine. The ocean crossing blurred into a long buzz of waves and creaking wood. They put him in a small locked cabin, separate from the other captives. They fed him better food, not out of kindness, but out of investment. He was $2 million tied up in bone and skin and a chest no one had words for. They could not afford bruises in the wrong places. He lay on the narrow bunk, feeling the ship roll and sway. Sometimes at night he would touch his own chest, fingers tracing the curve that had pulled him from one kind of prison into another. This chest, he thought, had been the reason boys laughed, the reason the master touched him in the dark, the reason traders had named a price that sounded like blasphemy. He wondered, briefly, what his life would have been like in a body that fit the rules. Then he wondered if any life on a plantation ever really fit any rules that made sense. Spain rose from the fog like a story someone had made up in a different language. Stone streets, tall buildings, churches that reached fingers of stone into the sky. The air smelled of sea salt, incense, horse manure, and roasted meat. Voices flowed around him, sharp and musical, each word a wave he didn't yet know how to ride. Don Esteban's estate sat just outside the city, a mansion of white stone, green shutters, and glossy floors that reflected candlelight. The walls were lined with paintings. Ancestors in stiff collars, women with bare shoulders, landscapes where nothing ever happened and everything was always peaceful. "You are far from home now," Esteban said as he looked Silas over. "But you will be famous here. More famous than any of those faces on the walls." He ordered clothes tailored for Silas. Trousers that fit well, shirts made from softer fabric than Silas had ever worn, cut deliberately close to the body so that his curves were impossible to miss. Where he had once tried to hide his chest, now every stitch seemed designed to frame it. The first time Esteban invited guests to see him, Silas stood behind a curtain, listening to voices hum on the other side. Laughter. Glasses clinking. The light, bright murmur of people who had never spent a day wondering what it was like to be bought and sold. "My friends," Esteban announced. "Tonight, I show you something I promise you have never seen. A man brought across the ocean, whose very body defies your understanding of how flesh should be arranged. I give you Silas." The curtain pulled back. Candles flared. Eyes widened. Silk rustled as women adjusted the way they sat, leaning forward without realizing it. The room seemed to inhale. Silas walked slowly into the center of their gaze. His shoulders were straight. His arms hung relaxed at his sides. His shirt, unbuttoned halfway, revealed the unmistakable swell of his chest. Large, rounded, undeniably feminine in shape, full enough to cast gentle shadows between and beneath. Each breath made them rise and fall, a movement that drew eyes like gravity. "Mio Dios," someone whispered. "It's real?" A woman murmured. "Of course it's real," Esteban said smoothly. "Go on, Silas. Turn for them." He turned. He walked. He stood still. They stared. Some looked at his face last of all, as if they had forgotten that it existed. Those evenings turned into a routine, then into a business. From salons, they moved to small theaters. From private invitations to printed posters. People paid to enter rooms where they could sit in polite rows and let their eyes feast on the sight of him. Esteban understood that the body alone wasn't enough. He needed a story. "Talk to them," he told Silas behind the stage. "Tell them something that makes their hearts beat faster. It doesn't matter if it's true. Truth is not profitable. Emotion is." Silas stared at him. "What do you want me to say?" "Tell them about your old master," Esteban suggested. "Tell them about the wife who wanted you but could not have you. Tell them about a lion that attacked you. Tell them about dogs, whips, miracles. They will swallow anything if you serve it with enough feeling." So Silas became not only a body, but a voice escorting that body deeper into people's minds. He told them, on certain nights, about his old master's wife. He described her face, her pale hands, the way she once stood in the doorway while he passed by. In reality, she had barely looked at him. In his story, she could not look away. In his story, she noticed his large, feminine chest beneath his shirt, her eyes dipping for a moment, her breath catching, a blush rising in her cheeks. He told them how her fingers almost lifted, as if drawn by a force she didn't understand, before she pulled them back and fled the room, terrified of her own desire. The audience trembled. He told them, another night, about a lion. In truth, he had never seen one. In his story, a circus had come to the town near the plantation, bringing a lion in a cage. In his story, the beast had broken free, stalking the edge of the fields, eyes burning, teeth gleaming. In his story, it leapt at him, claws slashing across his chest, the weight of its body driving him into the dirt. He told them how he felt its paws against his large, feminine chest, pressing, crushing, and how he somehow shoved it away and lived. They gasped. He told them about dogs that had chased him. That part was real. He embroidered everything else. He told them about nights under thunder, about working until his arms shook, about the confusion of living in a body that made everyone around him uncomfortable. Each story was part truth, part lie, part wound, part performance. Then came the dog. Esteban, always hungry for more, decided that fear would sell better than curiosity alone. They must believe you could die, he said, eyes glittering. Then, when you don't, they will feel grateful, relieved, thrilled. That feeling is worth more money. We will add a dog. A big one. Trained. He will lunge. You will stand strong. The handler will pull him back at the last moment. The ladies will scream. The men will laugh. It will be perfect. The night they added the dog, the hall was packed. The posters had promised danger in bold letters. People came early just to murmur about what they might see. Silas stood on stage, shirt open, his large, rounded, feminine chest exposed. It rose and fell slowly with his breaths. Beside him, a thick-necked dog strained against a chain, lips peeled back from its teeth, growling deep in its chest. "Don't move," Esteban had whispered. "Don't flinch. Fear is for them, not for you." The handler snapped his wrist. The dog lunged. The chain jerked taut. The audience screamed and then laughed, exactly as predicted. The performance went perfectly. Until, one night, it went wrong. No one could later say exactly what happened. Perhaps a link was weak. Perhaps the handler's hand sweated and slipped. Perhaps the dog, tired of the game, decided it no longer wanted to stop. Whatever the reason, the chain flew free. The dog burst forward. For a second, everything slowed. Silas saw the animal's eyes, wide and wild. He saw its teeth, white against black gums. He saw the jaws opening, the arc of its leap aimed straight at his throat, his chest, his heart. He moved before he had time to think. His body remembered other chases, other teeth. The plantation dog snapping at his heels, the feeling of running barefoot over uneven ground, lungs burning, heart pounding under his strange chest. He twisted aside, felt the hot brush of the dog's breath against his bare skin. He grabbed a chair, swung it with both hands, muscle straining. Wood crashed into flesh. The dog yelped, spun, lunged again. The front row scattered. Women shrieked. Men yelled. The handlers scrambled. Silas stepped between the dog and the closest cluster of people, his large, feminine chest heaving, his whole body trembling with adrenaline. The dog leapt once more. Silas swung again. Splinters flew. The dog crashed to the ground, stunned long enough for a handler to tackle it and others to drag it away. When it was over, the hall erupted into chaotic applause. Not for the handlers. For Silas. Esteban dragged him backstage, his face pale, his hand shaking. "You could have died," he whispered. "Yes," Silas said simply. "But you didn't," Esteban added quickly, and there it was again, that gleam in his eyes, the same gleam Silas had seen in Whitford's. This story will be everywhere tomorrow. The man with the woman's chest who fought off a savage dog. Tickets will sell like never before. We must do something with this. We must stage it. Refine it. Make it safer, but keep the danger. Silas looked at him, and in that look was every lash he had ever avoided, every stare he had ever endured, every night he had ever spent with someone else's arm around his chest like a possession. "No," he said quietly. Esteban blinked. "What?" "No," Silas repeated. "I am done." "You cannot be done," Esteban snapped. "You are mine. I paid for you. You belong to me." Silas' chest rose and fell slowly. "You bought my body," he said. "You did not buy my will." Esteban stared at him, outrage and disbelief battling in his face. "We will talk about this tomorrow," he said finally. "When you remember your place." But Silas already knew his place. It was not on that stage, with a dog's jaws inches from his throat and rich people applauding like children at a circus. The storm that rolled in that night might have been coincidence. Silas liked to think the sky had finally decided to do something for him. Rain slashed at the windows. Wind howled around the building's corners. The show was cancelled. A skeleton crew stayed to secure props and animals, grumbling, sleepy, distracted. A stagehand, exhausted, left a side door unlocked while he went to fetch rope. A stable boy, drunk on cheap wine, dropped a ring of keys in a hallway, cursing as he stumbled away without picking them up. Silas saw the keys. His heart lurched. He picked them up and closed his fingers around the cold metal. He could almost feel the chains that had once bound him vibrating through the metal teeth. He swallowed and moved. The hallways were dim, almost empty, filled only with the sigh of shudders and the occasional murmur of someone working behind a closed door. Silas walked quickly, every step measured, his senses stretched thin. He passed posters of himself on the walls, his body exaggerated into something grotesque and heroic at once. His large chest was drawn even bigger, the curve of it shaded heavily, his face made dramatic with deep shadows. He paused long enough to reach up and tear one down. Then he reached the side door. His fingers found a key that seemed to fit. He slid it into the lock, turned it slowly. The mechanism clicked. The door opened a crack, cold wind shoving rain through the gap. He stepped outside. The storm hit him like a wall. Rain poured onto his face, his hair, his clothes. His shirt became instantly soaked, clinging to him, outlining his chest so clearly that nothing was hidden. Lightning flashed overhead. Thunder rolled like the sound of an angry god, or perhaps, Silas thought, like applause finally coming from the right direction. He ran. He ran down alleys, feet splashing through puddles, breath tearing at his lungs, heart pounding against his large, feminine chest. He ran until the city blurred into streaks of light and darkness, until he was not sure if the water on his face was rain or tears or both. At the edge of the city, where the buildings thinned and the land began to rise, he slowed. His legs shook. His chest burned. But he kept moving, up a narrow road that wound between low stone walls and scrubby trees. Near the top, he found a cottage. Small, old, smoke curling from its chimney. Warmth leaking out under the door like a secret. He knocked. An old man opened the door, his hair white, his eyes sharp beneath heavy brows. He looked Silas over slowly. He saw the mud, the soaked clothes, the tremble in his hands. He saw the unmistakable curves of his large, rounded, feminine chest beneath the clinging fabric. Unlike everyone else, he did not flinch or stare too long. "I have no money," Silas said, voice raw. "Only my hands. I can work." The old man stepped aside. "Then work," he said. "Come in out of the rain." Silas entered. The cottage became the first place in his life where he was not a tool, a secret, or a show. He chopped wood because fires needed fuel. He carried water because someone had to. He mended fences, patched holes in the roof, weeded the old man's small garden. Each task existed because of need, not because of profit. The old man did not ask many questions at first. When he did, they were small ones. Do your bones ache when the rain comes? Can you read? Do you like onions in your stew? Slowly, as days turned into weeks, as the lines in Silas' face softened and his shoulders lowered from the permanent hunch of bracing for orders, the old man asked a different kind of question. "Why do you look like you expect someone to shout your name every time the wind blows?" He asked one evening. Silas stared into the fire. "Because they always did," he said. "On the plantation. In the house. On the stage. Someone always wanted something from me. Work. A story. A touch. A show. And now?" The old man asked. Now Silas hesitated. "Now I don't know what they could possibly want. I have nothing left to sell." The old man watched him carefully. "You have something," he said. "What?" Silas laughed, a short, bitter sound. "This body. This chest they all stared at?" The old man shook his head. "You have a story. I can see it pressing against your skin like it's trying to get out. If you don't let it, it will rot you from the inside." "I'm tired of people looking at me," Silas said. "I'm tired of being a story." "Being the subject of someone else's story is not the same as telling your own," the old man replied. "You have been looked at your whole life. Have you ever truly been heard?" Silas didn't answer. He didn't need to. The old man brought out old paper, ink, a pen worn down by years of use. "Write," he said simply. "Or speak. I'll write, if your hand won't obey you. But let it out." Silas' hand shook the first time he picked up the pen. Writing had never been his world. Letters were for white men, for ledgers and laws and lies. But now the letters could be his. He began with small things. His mother's breath on his forehead the night he was born. The smell of the quarters after rain. The feel of dry cotton scratching his fingers. The sound of the work bell that had ruled his days for years. Then he wrote about his body. He wrote, plainly and without flinching, that he was a man with a man's strength and a man's frame, but that his chest was large, rounded, feminine in its shape. He wrote about the first day at the river, about the boys' laughter, about the way their words had stuck to him like burrs. He wrote about Whitford, about the study, the plate of food, the nights in the big bed. He wrote about the weight of the master's arm over his chest, about the way a hand had rested on his strange, full flesh as if testing ownership. He wrote about the traders, the price, the auction. He wrote about the gavel, the crowd, the woman in the lace hat covering her mouth with trembling fingers as she stared at his bare chest. He wrote about Spain, about the salons and theatres, about the lies he told and the ones he lived. He wrote about the dog and the storm and the door and the road that had led him here. Every line tied a knot between his past and his present. When he finished, there were pages. Dozens. Stained with ink and sweat and sometimes with a tear that had fallen without asking permission. The old man took those pages to a printer he knew in the town. The printer read them with his lips pressed together, eyes flicking up occasionally to glance at Silas' chest as if matching words to the reality standing before him. "It's rough," he said. "But it's real." He set the presses in motion. The book that came out was small and plain. No gold on the cover, no illustration. Just a title stamped in dark ink. The Man They Tried to Own. And below it, a name. Silas Witt. Not the full name given to him by a man who bought his mother's pain. A name he had cut shorter, sharper, like trimming away a rotten branch. The book did not explode through the world like a storm. It moved more like a breeze, soft, almost unnoticed at first. People who knew the old man bought copies out of respect. Some read the first few pages and set it aside, uncomfortable. Others read it to the end and sat in silence for a long time afterward, the words crawling under their skin. In the last chapter, Silas wrote, "They told me my body was wrong, and then they told me it was special. They told me to hide my chest, and then they dragged me onto stages and ordered me to show it. They told me to be ashamed, and then they made my shame their entertainment. They bought my back to bend, my hands to bleed, my nights to hold their loneliness. They bought my strange, large, feminine chest as if it were a ticket they could punch again and again. They called me a marvel, a freak, a curiosity, a devil, an angel. They called me everything except what I was. I was a man. I am a man. A man whose body confused them. A man whose body made them uncomfortable. A man whose body they tried to own, define, and price. But my soul was never for sale. They owned my body for a time. They owned my labor, my image, my sweat. They never owned the quiet place inside my strange chest where my true self lived, beating against bone and flesh, whispering, 'You belong to you.' If you are hearing this now, far away from the fields where Silas first pulled cotton, far away from the stage where he fought a dog under chandeliers, far away from the bed where he lay with someone who thought ownership was the same as affection, remember this. He was not a monster. He was not a joke. He was not a trick of nature created for other people's amusement. He was a man with a body that did not fit their rules, and a heart that refused to be bought. Thank you for listening to his story. If it moved you, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel. There are many more stories like Silas, twisted, bruised, almost forgotten, that deserve to be told, heard, and never, ever priced again.